Hey everybody, Jeff Waldorf, Ron Placone here with you today, around the nation. Got a great show for you guys today. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll cover a lot of different interesting topics. And of course, we will be divisive Bernie bros, as usual. Isn't that right, Ron?
Yeah, of course. Just horrible Bernie bros. It's our fault when deranged people shoot up other people.
It is.
You know the left wingers. We love our guns, man.
That's right. It is
left-wing gun nuts. That's why we want universal health care. We want universal health care so we can shoot each other and it's easier to get care.
That's right. You just shoot each
we love
other.
Our guns.
You shoot each other and then we can go get patched up later on. See, it's fun. It's fun that way.
Yeah.
Long time no see, Ron. Good to have you back.
Yeah, dude. This is I'm good to be back. Last week was all fucked up. And,
Totally.
I'm glad we're not fucked up anymore, man.
Not for a while, anyway. So what happened last week? Of course, we had a big Skype problem due to some unintended updates. Somehow, I don't know how, but I fixed it. That's usually what happens. Like, I don't know what I did, but it works again. Okay. Man, technical shit. You know how it is. And after yelling at Skype over Twitter, they still didn't do anything, but I felt better. Yeah, anyway, that's enough about that. Glad to have you all here watching, of course, from home. Now, let me get to the breakdown of the stuff that we're going to cover. I just thought it's interesting. Let's talk about Sean Spicer. That's interesting, at least I think. And then we have Joe Manchin supporting, of course, the Saudi Arabia arms deal, and his opponent's not very happy about it. Then we do have the Bernie bro thing. We'll talk about that. And then we'll also talk about, ironically, guns and Philando Castile in the wake of that whole thing. What's the NRA have to say? And then Megyn Kelly and Alex Jones. How did that interview go? How was that received? We'll get to it. That's going to be fun. All right. Anyway, so that's the stories that we have today. Ron, you want to get started? Let's roll.
Yes. I am ready to get started in here.
Yay. All right. Down goes Spicer. Maybe. I don't know. According to a recent report in Politico, the White House press secretary, Sean Spicer, of course, is now leading a search for his own replacement. That's kind of sad when you think about it. Now, either Spicer might be tired of being under the bus, or maybe he just wants to go back to his true calling, being the White House Easter Bunny. Very lucrative job. Everybody wants to be the bunny. Either way, he's...
that was a gig where it was actually appropriate for him to hide in the bushes.
For sure.
Like, surprise, it's the Easter Bunny. That would have been an appropriate time for him to hide in the bushes.
Exactly.
I'm surprised that guy... I mean, I guess he is slowly snapping, but I really thought he was going to snap, like, completely early on. I was calling it, I was like, he's going to snap. And he kind of hasn't completely snapped yet.
I don't know. He's having a slow mental breakdown, I think. That's just my opinion. No proof of that.
But I thought he was going to jump ship, man. And, I mean, it looks like he slowly is. But, I mean, I thought it was going to happen a while ago.
I don't know. Like, he might be running into the same problem as Reince Priebus. Nobody's dumb enough to replace him.
It's a good point. It is a good point.
So, Politico notes that he's been reaching out to different people rather unsuccessfully, I might add, to fill this very important position. Now, last week, Spicer and White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus reached out to Fox News contributor Laura Ingraham about the role of press secretary and Daily Mail editor David Martosco about the role of communications director, according to a White House official. Now, Spicer and Priebus have had preliminary discussions with Ingraham, and Martosco met with Chief Strategist Steve Bannon last week, according to that same official. Now, here's their response, right? Ingraham declined to comment. In a phone call, Martosco said, "I can't hear you," and then hung up. He did not respond to an email. Okay, well, hey, man, it seems like there's a lot of people chomping at the bit to take over for Spicy, right? Seems like everybody wants that job. You also had other news outlets reporting, and I think I might have talked about this before, that Fox News host Kimberly Guilfoyle, whose name was floated back during the transition, was not interested in this position and has not been interviewed, according to people familiar with the effort. Again, I don't think people are stupid enough to want to take this job, especially considering how Spicy has been treated throughout this entire thing. It's almost like you would feel bad for him, but then you realize this guy's also a jerk. So he doesn't really deserve a whole lot of sympathy. But at the same time, working for Trump isn't an impossible job. Because he goes out and he says something, he sends everybody out to say a certain talking point, and then 2 hours later on Twitter, he completely blows that apart and then makes you look like an idiot or a complete liar. So,
well, then you have to attempt to clean up his mess.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a disaster. Like,
sad.
I think that, and more people are realizing now that if they get involved with this administration, they're committing political suicide, and they don't want to commit political suicide.
Right.
So they're just keeping clear. I mean, these are people, in that arena. They have a long-term foresight because they want to have a career. They're not just going to grab a quick paycheck or whatever. So they're thinking like, this guy is going off the rails. People are thinking he may or may not get impeached. I, of course, hope he does not get impeached because I don't want to see President Pence. I think would be way worse off. We've talked about that before.
We have.
But, I think that more and more people are realizing like this would be political suicide. And all the more reason you really need to pin the Republicans to Trump because, look at how grossly unpopular this guy is.
But you also have to realize, because I know the Democrats are just focusing on doing that, which that should be part of a strategy, but at the same time, they're also failing at the other part of the strategy and offering a vision to counter the Republican narrative. We don't see that, especially. Let's tie it into the race that's going to happen tomorrow between Karen Handel and John Ossoff, right? John Ossoff is against Medicare for all, and he's also against raising taxes on the rich in order to pay for certain things, right? Karen Handel doesn't believe that there should be a living wage. So, I mean, this is what we have. We have two terrible candidates against each other that almost nobody wants, and the Democratic establishment is saying, look at how great this John Ossoff guy is. You better float Georgia, or you better flip the 6 in Georgia. Vote your Ossoff off, or whatever. vote your Ossoff. There's that was hard to say.
Yeah, I think that's
super hard to say.
Yeah, I saw that trending on Twitter.
I was like, oh god.
And then people love to blame Bernie Sanders for it. They're like, oh, Bernie Sanders was saying he's not progressive. It's like, well, why are you shooting the messenger? He's not, and this is the problem. And if he loses, it's because people aren't going to see an alternative.
Right.
And and you're blaming the messenger for that. You're blaming Bernie for that.
Yeah. What is he supposed to do?
That's part of the problem.
What is he supposed to do? Give his heartfelt endorsement to somebody that he doesn't necessarily agree with 100%? I mean, he already did that during the campaign. What more do you want?
Yeah, right? No shit.
Especially since the Democratic Party hasn't done anything in kind. He didn't help. They didn't help the guy in Montana. Rob Quist didn't help him. Didn't help the guy in the Kansas special election. DNC didn't do anything for those two candidates that were Bernie Sanders backed. So why should Bernie Sanders go and back John Ossoff? Because he has a D next to his name? But back to the whole point.
That's what they want.
Yeah, it's true. But back to the whole point of tying Republicans to Donald Trump. Well, nobody wants to be tied to him. And the few people that are, well, they're not seeing a whole lot of different options. That's why Reince Priebus is probably not going to leave. And that's why Sean Spicer, he's actually moving up in the administration. Taking over, I believe, for Dubke, who actually did resign. Now, let me go back to the article here as to why people are jumping ship, right, from the communications department. Trump has been quick to blame his communication shop for his administration's troubles, with the president and senior staff expressing their displeasure with the way Spicer and Dubke handled the response in the hours following the firing of FBI Director James Comey, according to two White House sources. Despite the abrupt nature of the firing, Spicer and Dubke caught heat for failing to line up surrogates to go on television and for not having talking points that called out the hypocrisy of Democrats who criticized Comey when he was investigating Hillary Clinton. As Trump has continued to lash out at his communication team amid the intensifying investigations, the White House has pulled back from daily on-camera press briefings, with Spicer and Deputy White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders increasingly conducting gaggles with reporters that include no cameras and no audio. And when asked about it, Steve Bannon, interestingly enough, had said, Sean got fatter. That's why we're not doing video and audio briefings anymore. Sean just got fat.
Man.
Great transparency.
Bannon is not, first of all, Steve Bannon is not somebody that should be body shaming anybody else. I mean, I'm not trying to, hey, God knows I'm not perfect, not claiming to be, but Steve Bannon, come on, man. He's got a boozy nose. He looks pretty unkempt. He should not be body shaming anybody else. Neither should Donald Trump, if we're on that point. But yeah, I mean,
he's definitely a 5 out of 10. Maybe a 4.
It's funny because we sometimes forget, because there's so much messed up stuff going on right now. And the corporate media is such a miserable failure, maybe now more than ever before. I mean, because they get progressively worse as time goes on.
The only thing progressive about them.
Right, and there's nothing progressive about them. But we sometimes forget how toxic to press freedom this administration is, in a manner that's really repulsive. I mean, having closed doors event, prohibiting journalists from entering areas where journalists have the right to be, shutting journalists down when they're asking a question. And this, of course, trickles down. This is why, journalists at Dakota Access Pipeline are facing charges for doing their job. It's all connected, and it starts at the top. And I think that, sometimes we're so frustrated with the corporate media, and justifiably so. I'm not saying to forget about that lens. It is incredibly important. However, we also can't forget how truly repulsive and disgusting this administration is to that press. And it's straight up Orwellian. And sometimes we forget about that because of all the other awful stuff that's going on too. And that awful stuff maybe we have more power to do something about. But this is important too.
It's like you can point out the mistakes of the mainstream media without vilifying them and turning them into, like, calling them, all the horrific things that Donald Trump, for example, has called the media, traitors to the country. No, they're not traitors to the country. They might not be doing the best job, and we've certainly called them out on it. But call the free press traitors to the country, well, that doesn't work out either. That's not true either. And that's, and again, a good example of the extreme rhetoric that we have against a free press. I mean, did you see the poll where 42% of Trump supporters think it's okay to body slam a reporter? That's insane. And that speaks right to the toxic atmosphere that this administration and Republicans in general have created during this last campaign, at least. But I think it stretches further back because I think when you go back to when Fox News was created, and there are even right wingers out there who are conservatives that are like, we created this monster by creating this conservative bubble where we only have this narrative, and that everyone else who has a different narrative, well, they're wrong. They're not only wrong, but they're terrible for the country. They're against America, and that was evidenced by the old iteration of Fox News under Roger Ailes, which I think they're attempting to change that narrative a little bit more to I guess be more of a new CNN. But still, this is the Fox Newsification of America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's, again, we're just seeing the effects of that. As far as what they're doing with the press and transparency. I mean, it's great press transparency, Donald. Seriously. I mean, you got to love their appreciation for openness and accessibility.
It's that of a dictatorship.
Yeah, it's that of. I think he might
really
be.
Is.
I like, not to get all like Russia, right? But it's kind of like the tactics that Vladimir Putin has used to the press. Mm-hmm. And it's not wrong to make that comparison, even though that they have tamped down
something similar.
Exactly.
Bush did something similar.
Right. Anywhere where you have a right-wing authoritarian government, you end up they end up curtailing press freedoms.
Yeah. No, it's totally true, man. And sometimes
propaganda.
we forget about that because we point out the flaws of the establishment as a whole. Republicans and Democrats, and rightfully so. And we point out the flaws of the corporate media. Again, rightfully so. They are the powerful, they are the elite, and they do have a very, very skewed and compromised agenda. I would never say that's not the case. However, it's important not to lose sight of the fact that, we had an administration during the Bush years that would fax talking points over to the corporate media, and the corporate media went along with it. We have an administration now that bars media from things where media needs to be,
right?
And that is just that is the most undemocratic thing you can do. Having a compromised media is one thing. Having a media without any access, and to get access, they have to basically kiss ass and not ruffle any feathers.
Right.
We've accepted this as normal, and the media is partially to blame.
Yeah, and it's not normal
for it themselves. They've let this happen. But this is not normal. And when you've normalized this for as long as we have, when you see these reporters winning awards because they didn't ruffle any feathers, because they did the type of journalism that the establishment smiles upon. I think it was actually George Orwell that said it. Journalism is the stuff that the powerful is afraid to see in print. Everything else is just PR. That's a paraphrase, but that's basically what he said, and he's absolutely 110% right. But, when you've had a passive, compromised corporate media for as long as we have, it's going to lead to something totally dictatorial and authoritarian like what we have now with Donald Trump.
Right.
And it's important to not lose sight that this is disgusting and this is not normal and this is the Frankenstein.
And last point on this one that I'm going to make is that, people forget that journalism was all about muckraking. It was about causing problems for people in power. That's what journalism has always been. You think it's bad now. Donald Trump should go back to the 1800s in the middle of muckraking journalism. And let me tell you what, he would not have been very happy with the press then either.
Believe me.
Sad.
Believe me.
Look at the failing New York Times. Took me 2 weeks to get it from New York, but now I read it and I'm sad. Look at the things they said about me.
Sad.
But we need to do something to change this media environment. And as far as propagandists like Sean Spicer, he will be moving into a new role, from what I'm reading, as senior to both or at least he's been pushing to get into a new role, to serve as senior to both the communications director and press secretary. So he actually wants to get elevated. Now, that same White House official that gave the story to Politico said Spicer should be elevated, and if he's not, I would not blame him for leaving. The president owes him this much for all he's done for him, like all the bullets that he's taken, figuratively, of course, not literally. I probably shouldn't have used that, but all the fire that he's taken on behalf of Donald Trump out there in the media. Again, that was a bad phrase right there, and I didn't mean to say that, but it seems like Trump would almost solid for like, hey, thanks for cleaning up all my messes that I go out and create every single day. He says the president owes him this much for all he's done. Sean is indispensable, and I think the president knows that. So we'll have to see within the next few days, whether or not somebody's
knows that.
Yeah. I don't think he knows that anybody is indispensable. I'm pretty sure he's like, if you're not useful to me, Under the bus you go. Out. Gone.
Yeah, he's a by-the-book sociopath.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he is.
So whatever perceived loyalty that you think that Donald Trump has for his subordinates doesn't actually exist. And I think Sean Spicer is going to find out soon one way or another. Okay. So let's move on, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, recently, the Senate approved a major arms deal to our favorite ally, Saudi Arabia. Now, the Senate voted 47 to 53 to sell $500 million worth of precision-guided munitions to the fundamentalist-controlled country, who currently is in the middle of a war with Yemen. Very bloody, very disastrous war. Now, Republicans, along with 5 Democratic defectors, voted in favor of the arms deal. You want to guess what one of those Democrats are? Joe Manchin of West Virginia. Of course. He is facing, of course, a challenger from environmental activist Paula Jean Swearengin in next year's primary. Now, she talked to The Intercept.
By the way.
So I hear. One of these days, got to get her on the show. Now, she basically reacted very harshly to Manchin's vote in favor of the arms deal, which provides equipment necessary to conduct airstrikes in Yemen, and even suggested that he is a Trump ally. She said, "I'm not surprised because of his history in voting in favor of President Trump, like a Republican." Now, before I go into what you have to say about this, Ron, I do want to illustrate how much he is aligned with Donald Trump. Now, for this, I go to 538, which, ironically, in an article by Harry Enton that is trying to get Democrats to not run primaries against Joe Manchin, points out that he has voted with the president 67% of the time in the current Senate, more than any other Democrat. This was an article defending Joe Manchin. You shouldn't primary him, even though he votes for Republicans over 2/3 of the time. But we have to keep him because he's a Democrat. In what way is he a Democrat? He certainly ain't no progressive. He's not a liberal. He's what the Republican Party actually used to be. And that's where he's at. Yet, for some reason, he's being protected by the establishment. I can't quite figure that one out. Got some insight, Ron?
Gee, I don't know, man. I'm going to take 2 guesses, and I'm going to say it's because a large portion of the Democratic establishment, they are all just dinos, and they're Republicans that are okay with gay people. That's what they are. And even that, it's like they're okay with gay people because the status quo is okay with gay people. That's it. That is literally it. They are Republicans in every other way. Economically, they are Republicans, and that's what Joe Manchin is. I mean, he is a total dino. By standards in the past, he would be considered a Republican. And sticking to the contrast you made, I really hope Paula Jean beats him.
Me too. Yeah, our Overton window has switched so far over to the right, where center right is now considered centrist. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just this huge shift in politics in America. Like in the rest of the world, the Democratic Party is like, oh, it's their center right party. The Democrats are. I wish they actually had a left alternative. Wouldn't that be nice? We've been talking about that. But for some reason, though.
Well, you know what's funny? I was just going to say as an aside on that, Jeff, I saw this thing, over in England, they're having their problems right now. Of course, Jeremy Corbyn is, kind of a big breath of fresh air and totally. Something very motivating going on over there. But they were talking about all the things they got going on in there, and they're having some issues with corporatization of their media. Some of the similar stuff we have here, not to the extent of what we have it here,
right?
Going on nonetheless. And I was watching this thing where some activist was talking, and he's like, stuff that is considered normal in other parts of the European Union is considered far left here. Like we're more conservative. Right. Than other countries in the European Union. And I was just thinking about that and like wrapping my head around, and this is something that we've talked about before and something I've thought about before, but I'm just like, they're saying that things that are normal in other countries are considered crazy left to them. And that's how we can say that about them. Things that are considered normal to them are considered crazy left to us.
Right.
Not to us as in me and you,
but to the country
as a whole,
at least the political class that runs the country. Because when you break it down issue by issue, of course, more Americans believe in progressive priorities. I mean, you got 62% that believe in that are in favor of a Medicare for all system.
Sure,
and
yes.
You have a lot of policy priorities that have huge majorities in the American people, yet our political class, our government decides it doesn't want to pass those priorities, and that it actually works for the rich and 1%. But go on with your point. Sorry, I had to make that.
Well, you bring up a good point. I mean, I will say the country is more progressive than the establishment tells us it is. The other side of that, though, is you still have a lot of portions of this country that kind of buy the propaganda and the bullshit that they say, oh, well, if this worker makes $15 an hour, then I'm only going to get, they're going to cut my job and this and that. I mean, you have people that have a misdirected place of anger. So it's like stuff that is just assumed as regular in other countries, we're still having a hard time getting to here. Universal health care, living wages. We're still struggling with that here. There's people that don't support the Fight for 15.
Right.
That would benefit the most from it.
Yeah.
I have family. You have family members, I'm sure. I have family members that, are all about Trump, and they're the people that are getting hit hardest.
Yeah. By
what this administration wants to do. And, they don't really see an alternative in the Democrats, and some of that is, a lot of that is justified. Because the Democrats have really failed in messaging and they still, and I had this argument on Twitter recently, the Democrats do not actually support the Fight for 15. Yeah. They have a lot of nice flowery verbiage on their website. They have a lot of it, but they don't actually support and embrace the Fight for 15. They say, oh, we're eventually going to get there. We're going to start here. We're going to eventually get there. Yeah, we also want to eventually go to Mars. That doesn't mean it's a fucking priority.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of what we see, too, is about the politics of basically distraction, as well as, division, dividing the lower classes against each other or among, socioeconomic and racial lines. I mean, look, we see that all the time when it comes to the argument against, welfare benefits, right? We see that all the time, especially from the Republicans, where you have, the politicians they talk about welfare in coded language in order to basically say that, well, that goes to black people. Do you want your money going to black people? You shouldn't, because they're going to waste it and they're going to abuse it. So you should not be in favor of these welfare programs that you and your family also use. Because, again, the people that use food stamps more in America happen to be, a larger percentage of them happen to be white and rural and, of course, Republicans. So we have that.
Yeah.
Now, look, this ties into what's going on in West Virginia. Now, Swearingen, she continues talking to The Intercept. She said about the arms deal to Saudi Arabia, which is in itself a whole bunch of different problems there with that whole thing, saying that Senator Manchin voting against a provision to stop the sale tells me that Senator Manchin supports giving weapons to a country that is known for harboring terrorists. The weapons could possibly end up in the hands of terrorists. And look, we know that Saudi Arabia is actually very sympathetic with Islamic extremism. You know why? Because they end up spreading it. There's a recent article in the New York Times editorial board, or by the editorial board. They wrote that Saudi Arabia undermines whatever good they do by continuing to spend billions of dollars spreading Wahhabism, its ultra-conservative brand of Islam, which in turn inspires ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and other Sunni extremists through a network of imams and mosques in countries like Kosovo, Indonesia, and Pakistan. Depending on the Wahhabi clerics for legitimacy, the royal family has been slow to reform a religion that teaches that non-believers and wayward Muslims should be shunned or fought if they reject its strict message. Experts say that some Saudi school texts seem to make a virtue out of hating others. The Saudis, aided by American intelligence and arms, may also be creating extremists with their brutal war in Yemen. They are. We are creating terrorists by giving weapons and bombing these countries. So, But again, we have this country that is that spreads this radical Islamic extremism, and yet there are friends. There are so-called friends, buddy, because of the petrodollar.
Bingo.
And that's what it's about.
This can all be traced to the petrodollar. That's all this is. We don't criticize Saudi Arabia because we basically have a deal with them. And that deal, very simply put, and I know it's a little more complex, but simply put, you preserve the petrodollar, you help us out with our resources, and we will be your hired military, essentially. Mm-hmm. And that's what we go and do. And that's why we're dropping bombs on Yemen. That's why we're doing all the stuff that we're doing internationally. So, yeah, it is hypocrisy 101. And when you hear John Kerry and these people talk about it, when you hear Donald Trump or even Obama, when he was doing it, try to justify intervening in Syria, it's absolutely ridiculous compared to what we're really doing around the world. Airwars.org, an organization dedicated to tracking civilian deaths via airstrikes, they are depleted in their resources. Mm-hmm. And they can only focus on what we're doing. They can only focus on what the United States is doing. That's how bad it's gotten. Does the media report on this? Absolutely not. Why? Because they're compromised by the war industrial complex. It's really disgusting, but more people are noticing it now because it's a very big villain doing it in Donald Trump, as opposed to a very likable president like Barack Obama. So that's the one kind of silver lining, but it's like, how can you even celebrate it too much? Because stuff's really still going on, and there's not really much that people can do to change that, because you have to get under the guise that they'll actually have peace candidates. And what do we do when we have a peace candidate? We smear them. Whether they're Bernie Sanders, Jill Stein, or whoever else, we smear them. And we scapegoat them, and we blame them.
It's like...
let me make a quick connection here, Jeff. The Steve Scalise shooting, which, I don't wish ill will on anyone. I don't wish violence on anybody. I hope he makes a full recovery. And I hope he maybe learns from it and says, maybe I shouldn't vote against making it a little harder for mentally ill people to obtain guns. Maybe that's going a little too far. But anyway, they blame Bernie Sanders, and they blame Bernie because this guy was a Bernie guy. You know what else this guy also really bought into? He really bought into the Russian narrative. He talked about how Donald Trump hacked our democracy. So why aren't we also blaming the 24/7 talk about Russia, the talk about warfare, the talk about un-American action, when there's no proof and there's not quite any evidence yet? There's no evidence yet. There's no evidence yet.
A lot of circumstantial evidence.
A lot of...
circumstantial, but nothing proof.
I would say reason for suspicion.
Okay, that's fair.
I'm not going to say that... Is the Trump administration shady as all fuck? Yeah,
absolutely.
Dude. No one's going to say that's not the case. And the people that are, so far where they're saying that's not the case, that's like, come on, man. Now you're feeding into... the people that buy this stuff, because you're sounding almost as crazy on the other side. There's definite reason for suspicion. There's reason for investigation.
There's reason for investigation.
Reason for speculation. But until you have actual evidence, there's not reason for 24/7 hysteria. There's not reason for clickbait from the corporate media. There's not reason for establishment Democrats to call this warfare and potentially get us involved in a conflict with Russia. There's no reason for that whatsoever. Even if we do find collusion, there's no reason for a war. But there's no reason for that whatsoever. That's the difference between A and B. This guy bought all that stuff hook, line, and sinker. And then he went and he did this crazy action. And instead, we're blaming Bernie and his supporters. Instead of saying, hey, we've hyper-sensationalized this issue without any actual evidence, maybe that was irresponsible. Maybe that contributed to this. Nope, it was Bernie Sanders and his supporters.
Right. Of course, because they have to lay the blame at the feet of people who are anti-war, people who are progressive, people who don't buy into the military-industrial complex, people who aren't necessarily 100% swallowing everything about the Russian narrative, even though there are some compelling parts, I do have to admit, at least in my opinion, but nothing, of course, to constitute the level of, as you said, 24/7 hysteria that we're seeing from channels like CNN, MSNBC, and other mainstream corporate outlets.
I'm not saying I'm against the investigation.
Oh no, we're for
investigation.
investigation.
I'm for the investigation.
I think you've said that multiple times, Ron. We know that you're in favor of looking into this shady shit, because shady shit is shady shit. So don't worry about it. I'm not challenging you on that, of course. But anyway.
I just feel like, and I wasn't even directing that at you. I was just like saying it for like, just because I feel like so many people are, there is this mentality, and I know we got to get off this topic, but just real quick, I know there's this mentality right now that really bothers me, where it's like, well, you're with us or you're with the terrorists.
No.
That mentality is going on parts of the left now.
Yeah.
Where it's like, well, they colluded, and if you're not, and it's like, dude, we're not saying we're against the investigation. We're saying, let's not jump too far off the ship without evidence. That's what we're saying. And I don't see how that's not seen as completely rational. Like, well, why are the millennials so skeptical about this issue? We're skeptical because we remember the FBI
Iraq.
and all these other intelligence agencies telling us there had to be weapons of mass destruction in Iraq,
do remember
and
that.
it not being there. We also remember when we couldn't impeach a war criminal. We remember all that. So maybe we're a little shaky. We also remember the Democrats being weak at every opportunity they were given. And I'll tell you what, you impeach Trump tomorrow, we get President Pence. You know what happens then? The Republicans distance themselves from the disaster that was Trump. Pence, nothing changes in 2018, and then Pence wins again in 2020. I promise you that is what would happen. All
right. Back to the Democrats,
we got to move on.
Now, look, on the whole issue of, voting in favor of this country that essentially supports terrorism, thanks to the petrodollars we started this on. We expect the Republicans to be hypocrites and vote to give them more weapons, right? But not the Democrats, or at least we used to expect them not to be hypocrites until we found out the extent of the corruption inside the Democratic Party. Now, Paula Jean, going back to her, she linked the Manchin's vote to his voting records on domestic matters, saying that both are evidence that Manchin does not respect human rights, saying, quote, he's showing us that he doesn't value human life in Appalachia, in America, or other countries. People are dying in the streets and starving in Yemen. How does he sleep at night? West Virginians are tired of dying and starving as a result of his poor leadership, too. Now, I'll tell you how he sleeps. On a giant pile of fossil fuel industry money. You know his top three donors? One of them is his number one donor, was from the fossil fuel industry. Nearly $100,000 in campaign donations from them. You also have the second and third highest donors are insurance companies and big pharma. Number two is, most notably, Mylan Pharmaceuticals. Do you remember Mylan Pharmaceuticals? Does that ring a bell?
Refresh my memory.
That is the company that jacked up EpiPens, the price of EpiPens by 400%.
Oh, okay.
That
was that Quilly, or what? How did you say his name? Martin Shkreli. I'm sorry.
No, that's not the guy. That's actually not the guy. That's Heather Bresch, is the CEO of Mylan Pharmaceuticals. But Farmer Bro did stick up for her, Shkreli. So no, he did. He raised the price of the what is it?
That's right.
Yeah, there was a drug that he raised the price of like some crazy 1,000% or something like that.
Okay.
So the whole pharmaceutical industry is essentially based on greed.
We just can't keep our corporate pharmaceutical industry profiteers straight. There's just too many of them. We need a spreadsheet. We need a grid. We should have a Monopoly game.
We need something.
Pick your corrupt guy. And then it's like, you got Martin Shkreli. I only got, shit.
Let's play.
I'll trade you EpiPens for HIV medication.
We can play like bingo, right? We can play, corrupt profiteer bingo. It's that bad. But anyway, these companies, obviously they fund Joe Manchin, and of course, he does their bidding for that money. Now, along with the Republicans. Because he votes 67% with the Republicans. Manchin isn't a Democrat. He's an old school Republican. He's what the Republican Party used to be before the Republican Party went batshit insane. Now, Paula Jean, she is a real progressive. Now, the citizens of West Virginia, they might not actually care about Saudi Arabia, right? But they do care about healthcare. They do care about good jobs, and they do care about higher wages and economic opportunity. And if you think there are progressives,
about clean water,
and they care about clean water too, yeah, exactly. And they care about they care about, I would assume, clean energy as well, so they don't have to blow up their majestic mountaintops in order to get at the coal.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think there aren't progressives in West Virginia, or people who are conservative that wouldn't vote for a progressive, who would actually try to make their lives better, remember that Bernie Sanders, he got a room full of Trump voters to clap for single payer. And of course, he had the races in Kansas and Montana where progressive candidates actually got close to winning without any sort of DNC support, and with millions of dollars of outside money flooding into that race. And also, you even had a Republican Trump voting district in New York having a Sanders progressive winning. So if you think that couldn't happen in West Virginia, then I don't think you are quite as familiar with the country as you think you are. Even if you're in West Virginia,
Absolutely.
There are progressives there. And even if they're not like dyed-in-the-wool, super hippie liberals, there are people that see the common sense in having health care for everybody and having a cleaner environment and having job opportunities, especially in things like clean energy. Because, look, I remember the guy who was talking with Bernie Sanders, and, he was asked, hey, man, if we shut down the coal industry, but there were better jobs that pay better, would you go and work those jobs? Yeah, without a doubt. Of course I'd work those jobs if they had good benefits. The thing is, in West Virginia and places like that, there are only coal jobs, and those are the only jobs that you can actually take care of a family on and raise a family and get health care on and other benefits. Imagine if we expanded opportunity like that without having to destroy the environment to do so. That'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And people are coming around to that, and they're coming around to the idea that, we're voting against our own self-interest when we vote Republican. And, there's some sects of progressives that really do have our interests at heart, that give a shit about living wages, that give a shit about clean water. And that's that's right in people's backyards.
Right.
And they're starting to come around to it, and they're starting to see through the bullshit propaganda fluff from the establishment of, oh, this is socialism, this is this is that. People are seeing through it now. And it's about time. But it's great.
Long overdue.
Yeah, it gives you a little faith in tomorrow. It really does.
Mm-hmm. All right, so what do you want to do next? We've got we got a Harvard study that disproves once again the Bernie bro myth, or we have Philando Castile and the NRA, or Megyn Kelly and Alex Jones.
Ooh. That's tough, man.
Super tough.
That's a tough. Let's do the Bernie bro myth.
Okay, that's going to take a while.
All right. Well, then that might be the last, man, because I can't stay too late.
I know. Like I said, there's a lot of information in this one. But all right, we'll go with that one. Now, some in the establishment press, as well as Democrats, are continuing their smear campaign against Bernie Sanders, in spite of evidence that Sanders is and will continue to be the most popular politician among Democratic voters as well as independent voters. Now, you have people out there like Neera Tanden, Joyanne Reid, that of course are continuing to smear Bernie Sanders and his supporters as lazy, sexist moochers who are just doing nothing but trying to divide the Democratic Party in order to help Donald Trump win, which is insane because the whole reason that we supported Bernie is because he's the only one who could actually beat Donald Trump in the Democratic Party. So that whole narrative makes zero sense. Now, in doing so, they of course continued to peddle the long debunked Bernie bro narrative, which of course states plainly that all Bernie Sanders supporters are angry, sexist white men, people who look like us, essentially. We're to be surprised, we're not actually representative of most Bernie Sanders supporters. Strangely enough. Yeah, I know, right? Mm-hmm. Me and my whiteness. No. Turns out not all Bernie Sanders supporters look like us. It's crazy, isn't it? Now, there's
I've seen those statistics too, Jeff.
Yeah.
It's actually A lot of them are young. There's that going on. But actually, I mean, there's statistics out there that his lowest support group is white men.
Actually, this is that story. So let me show
Yay.
you. Let me show you the results of a new survey conducted by Harvard University in the Harris poll. It's actually not quite a new survey, but it was conducted among 2,027 registered voters between April 14th and April 17th. Now, in that, it found that Bernie Sanders is actually more popular among women, African Americans, Hispanic, and Asian Americans than white people, and specifically white men. Oops. I have a graphic for you that I want to put up. So there's the results. You might have been seeing this floating around social media. Now, the poll shows that, of course, 55% of men and 52% of whites approve of Bernie Sanders. However, Sanders is approved by 73% of African Americans, 68% of Hispanics, 62% of Asian Americans, and 58% of women. And even though Sanders identifies as an independent, over 80% of Democrats approve of him. Oops. Hey, somebody show this to Joyanne Reed. She's going to need it. Look, by smearing Bernie Sanders and progressives and his followers, you are literally shitting on 80% of your own base. Oops. Mm-hmm. That's not very smart. And look, out of those 80%, maybe they wouldn't have all voted for Bernie Sanders, of course, had the primaries been fair in the first place, and had the DNC treated both candidates the same, like they're obligated to do so within their own rules. Now, maybe they like him, but think, okay, but your ideas might not work, but they still like him, and all that stuff. But here you have the establishment media and a lot of mainline Democrats smearing him as a sexist or a hypocrite, or because, well, like the hypocrite thing, right? One of the things that they tried to get him on, and I think this is where one of the Joyanne Reed smears was, oh, he made money off his book. He's in the 1% now. Mm-hmm. Wait. So he made money off a book by selling a book that people actually wanted to read. Oh my God. Hypocrite. He's not actually supposed to sell anything. No, he's not somebody who doesn't believe in capitalism. His brand of, social democracy, democratic socialism, is the prescription to save capitalism from itself, from its worst excesses. But again, they try to, smear him as a hypocrite for making money off his book that people actually wanted to buy and read. In fact, I'm in the middle of reading it right now. But Joyanne Reed, though.
Well, I wanted to go on the Joyanne Reed thing too. I love
she's the worst.
Her. I got the biggest kick out of her. Did you see her apartment analogy? Or
I
her
did.
Roommate
I covered that.
All right, so let's touch on that. So she said that Bernie is like the roommate that moves in, and then doesn't pay rent, but wants you to do everything he wants, right? Like that was the gist of it, right? Am I getting that right? She went on this Twitter rampage.
Yeah, it was something like Bernie Sanders is the guy that moves in, he eats your food, he trashes your decor, and then pays no rent. Something like that. So lazy moocher who hates your aesthetic.
Bullshit. And first of all, that was something the right wing would do. First of all, the right loves to paint all progressives as lazy and wanting a handout. So she was pandering to that bullshit. First of all.
Well, do you know
her analogy was just awful. Like that analogy made no logical sense whatsoever. Here's an analogy that does make sense, and I can use myself as an example here. So I had a roommate that just moved in recently, and he's a really cool guy. He manages a restaurant, and my roommate happened to fall upon this really cool situation where he got a ton of furniture and really cool stuff for a packaged price from friends of his. So that's all his stuff now, but it all enriches our house a lot. So he moved in, and he made our house 1,000,000 times better with a TV, with porch furniture, with tables out in our backyard now, with a hammock. We got a freaking hammock, Jeff. I'm not a rich man,
lazy
but
millennial.
I got a hammock now in Los Angeles. And my new roommate, made all of this possible. similar to Bernie, made it possible for a lot of young people to actually be motivated by the idea of the Democrats again, to actually, want to participate in politics. He has this powerful email list that they really want. He's doing outreach for them. He campaigned for Clinton.
Unity tour.
Compromise after compromise. He did the fucking Unity tour. Compromise after compromise. That this guy, and here's the biggest thing. He handed them a platform that could win. He handed them a winning platform. All they need to do is say, hey, 80% of our base wants this. We're taking it. That's all they have to fucking do. They're not doing it because their donors don't want that. But that's all they have to fucking do. Bernie, in this situation, is my roommate to my house. And me, if I was the Democratic establishment, you know what I would do to my roommate? I'd be like, hey, thanks for making this house so much better. By the way, you don't get to use the couch. You don't get to use your bedroom. Here's a little fucking cot that I built out of string. You have to sleep there because fuck you. That's why. So there's my counter.
Why are you being so disharmonious,
bullshit
Ron?
Comparison. Huh?
Why are you being so disharmonious?
Shut the fuck up and unite, Jeff.
Unity. We need unity.
That's what I said to my roommate. That's like, yeah, sleep in the corner, you fucker, and tell all your friends that that's where they have to go too if they ever come over. And shut the fuck up and unite and pay rent. That's a better comparison than Joyanne Reed's bullshit comparison that has a basis in nothing and is something you'd expect from a right-winger, not a supposed progressive personality.
But here's the thing, though. Speaking of pandering, right? That whole thing was pandering, you said, to right-wing ideas. Well, who do you think the Democratic Party is trying to court? They're going after Romney voters.
And it worked out great for them. It worked out.
It worked out wonderfully. When they all voted for Trump, it worked out great. That's who they're pandering to. That's who the Democratic Party is trying to actively court going into 2018. It's as if they have no idea what their base stands for. They have no idea who the people who vote for them actually want. And look, I guess you could be confused if you're on Twitter. Like 80% of Democrats, Democratic voters, approve of Bernie Sanders. It's like the Democrats only see the 20% of really angry people on Twitter. And they think that's our base. It's insanity. Yeah. This is why the Democrats totally lose. And it's, Joyanne Reed, it's now Peter Dow, all those people, okay? And these are the people that are in the soon-to-be irrelevant category when it comes to the Democratic Party. And it's because, again, they would rather, as a party and as personalities, lose to Donald Trump than to ever have a progressive win.
Amen. Yeah, I mean, this is the theme we've been revisiting time and time again, and then you find out that it's not all, it's not just a bunch of white guys that like Bernie Sanders. It's a lot of different people, and
look at all those different people.
Rightfully so. The guy, there it is. Men is where he's actually not doing so great. White people is where he's not. Democrats 80%, Asian Americans 62%, Hispanic 68%, African Americans 73%. Gee, I wonder why. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that this guy was active in the civil rights movement. I don't know what Hillary Clinton was doing then. She wasn't. I don't think she was active in the civil. Not to my knowledge, anyway.
Goldwater girl.
On that, but not to my knowledge. Bernie Sanders sure as fuck was, and there's that famous meme of him being dragged away, being chained to a black person, being dragged away by cops. They attempted to use it to smear him. It backfired. Had the opposite effect. Because they were like, oh, look at this good-for-nothing going to jail. Yeah, he was protesting for civil rights, you fuck. He was protesting for civil rights, you idiot. And it was the right that tried to do that, not the left. But nonetheless, a smear that failed miserably. A smear that totally failed miserably. And when Black Lives Mattered interrupt Bernie, he said, you know what? They have the right to be heard right now. Let's hear them out. And he let them speak. When a Black Lives Matter person came on a Hillary Clinton speech, which had a lot less people at it, by the way. There were a lot less fucking people there.
There were a lot less.
They were told to shut up. They were told to shut up and get out. Just like in Sacramento, a bunch of nurses that want single-payer health care were told to shut the fuck up and get out by the Democratic establishment.
By the way, the nurses are awesome.
The nurses what?
They're awesome, by the way.
Yeah, they're
fucking awesome. So I love the nurses. Now, who doesn't love the nurses other than, of course, Democratic establishment hacks?
Right.
But yeah,
those selfish nurses.
Yeah, I know, wanting
dedicating
healthcare
their
for
lives
everyone
to helping sick people, wanting them all to get care.
How dare they?
Selfish. Selfish.
You know, they're just that roommate, you know, that comes in and just trashes your aesthetic.
I can't wait to set him up a cot in the corner and tell him to go fuck himself. I'm gonna do that when he gets home.
That's right.
Like, I'm gonna eat all his food, then be like, by the way, I want rent twice a month. Fuck you, because fuck you. That's why. Give me your email list.
We also have Tom Perez, great example of the whole Bernie bro thing, right? A guy that spread this during the campaign. You know, in order to win the Nevada caucus. Now, the Democrats had a chance to change the direction of the DNC. They didn't. They ended up picking this guy who said that, oh, we can paint Bernie Sanders as the candidate for white men. So let's just whitewash everyone else with African Americans, Latinos, and Asian Americans. Let's just whitewash all those people to try to paint this narrative that Bernie Sanders is just not good for African Americans or not good with all these other these groups. We're going to play identity politics to the greatest degree, so we can make sure that Hillary Clinton gets crushed by Donald Trump. Again, let's talk about the Pied Piper strategy. That's exactly what they did. Let's raise up Donald Trump so we could have an easier time beating him. Oops! Oh, that didn't work out, did it? No, that worked out actually pretty bad.
Yeah. Well, and Perez is doing a bang-up job. I mean, Perez is seeing just how unpopular Bernie is firsthand at that Unity tour, where he needed to just hype up Bernie Sanders because no one wanted to hear him talk. People would boo him. No one even wanted to hear him talk. He had no business being there, and he would just hype up Bernie Sanders because that's who everybody gave a shit about. Yeah. Nobody wanted to hear that corporate tool say a word.
Yeah.
Nobody.
So
it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and yet, you know, people like Daily Kos founder Marcos Melitsos, right? You know, he talked about. Let's see. He talked to Ryan Grimm from the Huffington Post, right? And of course, in a recent interview, he's like, "Yeah, we're Bernie Sanders guys, overly white, overwhelmingly white and male." He said, "We remain steadfastly focused on the bigger picture." The Democratic Party picture, again, less sexy, less excitement, but Clinton wasn't Joe Lieberman, and she was running on the most liberal platform in party history. Was she? Really? Seriously?
They love that argument. She kind of adopted some of Bernie's platform. Yeah, she did kind of do that in verbiage, in words. But then what did she actually run on? Universal health care will never come to pass.
Nope.
I don't support the fight for 15.
We like fracking.
Foreign policy, forget it. She's known for being hawkish. She's unapologetic about it, despite being wrong about Iraq. She had no plans of her own. Did she come out against fracking? No, she didn't. She promotes it around the world.
Exactly.
Well, that's the most progressive platform in history? No, Obama's platform was more progressive than that.
Look, if that's
she adopted some of his platform, kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
Kicking and screaming, and in words alone. But in practice, not at all, and nobody bought it. People saw through it.
If that's your standard of liberal, what she ran on, well then, I don't think anybody understands what liberalism is actually supposed to be, what being a progressive actually is. Now, Melitza said, "We saw little reason to further divide our party." When asked why his site didn't endorse Bernie Sanders despite 60% of its users supporting Bernie Sanders over Clinton, he said, "Not to mention, given the decidedly white complexion of the Sanders coalition, it made little sense to hitch our wagon to a person who had such difficulties attracting the party's key growth demographics. Latinos, African Americans, and women. In other words, we were focused on the future."
Mm-hmm.
72% of African Americans, 60% or 68% of Hispanic voters, 62% of Asian Americans, all those people would have voted for Bernie Sanders. And in addition, of course, to some of the working class Trump supporters, instead of, because most of the Trump voters were not white working class people. They were actually middle class former Romney voters.
Mm-hmm.
So who, they tried to court for Hillary Clinton. So again, you don't blame this on the white working class. This was all about, the Democratic Party hitching their wagons to try to get the suburban white soccer mom vote that normally votes for Republican candidates. And guess what? They voted for Republicans this time in Donald Trump. So, look.
Yeah, it was a very failed strategy.
Very failed. So, no, but hey, Democratic Party, keep trying to unsuccessfully smear the most popular politician in America, whose policies are not only common sense, but, of course, increasingly popular, in order to just, go and serve your donors and serve the establishment, while us progressives, well, we're going to work to expand opportunity and hope in this country, and for actually, in order to get us to a better, more progressive future, for everybody.
What political party has the two most popular politicians in the country in it? And I know Bernie is technically
an independent.
He's registered as an independent, but he campaigns with the Democrats. He caucuses with them. He's doing outreach for them.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter what's next to his fucking name. Shut the fuck up.
Just shut up and take the gift that we have given you in the form of Bernie Sanders. I mean, what is so hard to accept that? Hey, you know what? If we should accept Bernie Sanders and all the supporters and adopt these progressive policies that are going to be helpful to the economy and to the country and to everybody, and it's gonna increase our party's viability into the future, and it's going to help us win elections all over the country, and we'll be in more positions of power. Isn't that a good thing? No. Instead, we're going to go and we're going to take the we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot. That's what we're going to do. We're going to take all these suggestions. We're going to take what Bernie Sanders gave and went, that's nice. Yeah, gone. Throw it in the toilet. Throw it in the trash. Because we don't care about winning. We would rather have somebody like Donald Trump win a second term than actually elect a progressive to run this country. Because we know that if we do that, our free ride is over. Our gravy train ends.
It's as simple as this, Jeff. What political party has the two most popular politicians in the country involved with it more so than any other party and is still wiped out at every level?
Yeah.
One that needs grossly reformed.
All right. I assume you got to go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You assumed right.
Thank you, Ron. Great show. Great talking to you about these topics.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Super fun. Thank you. Hopefully we'll see you on time next week.
Yes.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, man.
Yeah. All right, man. Take care.
You take care of yourself too. We'll see you next week.
All right, man.
All right, everybody else. We're gonna save the Philando Castile story for tomorrow, and then we also have the Megyn Kelly, Alex Jones interview that we're gonna cover as well tomorrow on the show. And of course, anything else that you want me to cover, you can remember to tweet me at TYT Nation. It's down there on the screen, of course, or post on our Facebook page. I do check those things. So you want me to cover a story, you think something's important, let me know about that. So I will cover it. All right, everybody. Thanks for going around the nation with me. Thanks to Ron Placone, of course, as always. Check him out. He's, of course, on the Jimmy Dore Show, as well as a myriad of other places, and here every Tuesday on TYT Nation. All right, everybody. Thanks all. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Remember, love you guys, and change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation. We'll see you tomorrow.